Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Under One Roof MTL, where we're demystifying home ownership one episode at a time. I am Robin Flynn. Super happy to be with you this afternoon. We're here with you until 1 p.m. We'll give you plenty of time to get to your Super Bowl parties. You hang out with us for an hour, and then you can throw in your chili. I threw my chili in the slow cooker this morning, so I'm sure my house, when I get home, it's going to smell so good. Super happy to be with you guys as usual. Martin Spalding, Fred Pichette from Fred and Martin, LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties. What's up, guys?
Good afternoon, Robin. Very happy to be with you guys again this weekend. It's an exciting weekend. Absolutely. There's a Super Bowl weekend.
We will have our picks later on.
Yeah, we will.
We'll save that for now. Let's start with our trivia question. We start every show with a trivia question of the week and something very exciting and
we
different.
We have some breaking news.
Breaking news. Our trivia question now comes with a prize to the first person to correctly answer it. So the trivia question of the week is brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. You can visit their store at the Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. If you are the first person to text in the correct response to our trivia question at 514-800, you will receive a box of delicious Felix and Norton cookies delivered straight to your door. You don't even have to leave your house.
Gotta like that.
Oh, I love everything that shows up right at my door.
I don't care what LJ says. They are the best cookies.
Fair.
Their ménage à trois are excellent, I must say.
It's a really good cookie. Okay, so our trivia question this week. What is the name of the federal agency in Canada that is responsible for overseeing the country's housing market and providing mortgage insurance to lenders? If you think you know the answer, 514-800. We will reveal the correct answer and the winner at the end of the show before 1 p.m. Guys, when I was on my way in today, my nephew slept over last night. He's 8 years old, so I was driving him home to Point Claire, and we were chatting in the car. Very smart kid. And he was asking me, do you think I should buy a house or get an apartment when I grow up? And I go, well, what do you want to do? And he says, I think I want to get an apartment. And I said, well, it depends if you want to pay rent or do you want to pay a mortgage? And he asked me, well, what's a mortgage? And then I had to sort of rack my brain to come up with a way to explain a mortgage to an 8-year-old. Who, I didn't even touch on interest rates or anything like that. The way I explained it was when you are paying rent, you're paying your landlord. He owns the building and you are paying him to live there. When you have a mortgage, your bank technically owns the house and you're paying them to live there. But at the end of the day, you will own the property. So I was trying to make it make sense to an 8-year-old. How would you have answered that question?
That's a great question, but when you're paying rent, you're paying someone else's mortgage.
Yes.
So if you want to build equity, purchase a property, get a mortgage. It takes a long time to pay it off, but year after year, you're building equity, which is something which has value. And in Canada, your principal residence is immune to capital gains. In other words, if your property, you buy it for $200,000 and 10 years later you sell it for $400,000, you don't pay capital gains taxes on that $200,000 that increased in value. So it makes it an incredible investment, probably still the best investment in Canada.
Absolutely. Now, how do you explain? If I had said that to my nephew, he would have said, what's an investment, right? Like that's the thing is when you're having a conversation with an 8-year-old, you have to explain it in a way that's going to make sense to them.
I probably would have broken it down to parts. So let's say you want the candy bar that's $5, right? But you only have $1 on you today. You can go see the bank who's going to lend you the other $4 to get to it, and you're going to pay back those $4 over time. Now, if you have this chocolate bar for long enough, you might be able to resell it to somebody else for a higher value, but you get to keep this at the end. So you're essentially in business or a partnership with this bank owning this candy bar or house in this example, as opposed to just trying to get a little piece of somebody else's but never actually getting it for yourself.
That's a perfect way.
Devil's advocate, what if you eat the candy bar? What happens then?
So then let's just replace it with a toy.
There you go.
That makes a lot of sense. Guys, there was a lot of stuff in the news this week. Let's start with, Martin, this was a story you had mentioned during our meeting this week, rapid entry to housing Montreal. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, no, as I was preparing for this week's show, I came across, it's called Programme d'entrée rapide en logement, ERL. And basically, it's a program that the example that I found was in the Gazette. A couple living in a rental property have a bit of a tiff with the landlord, they get evicted. All of a sudden, they got to find another place to live. She, in the couple, gainfully employed, but they still had a lot of trouble finding a property because of a challenging market that we find in Montreal. They reach out to a social worker. Social worker refers them to this program. And what the program is set up to do is to help people short term that don't have any other issues find a property. And they also offer a little bit of money so you can set yourself up, and a little bit of money so that they can subsidize the rent. It really is a program to get you back under a roof, get you back into a property, and it's kind of a leg up. It gets you running. It gets you rolling again if you've run into some difficulties. And a lot of people say, "Well, homelessness, that's not for me." It's amazing how quickly that can happen to anybody. Whether it's through a divorce, a bad investment, a job loss, boom, all of a sudden you find yourself unemployed, or you find yourself homeless, and you need the services of something like the ERL program.
I found it very interesting because in this program specifically, they noted that a lot of the time people who just went through a very short rough patch, whether they lost their job for a couple of months and found new employment right away, or it was a tiff with their employer, they didn't qualify for any of the other programs. In Quebec, we have tons of social programs which are fantastic, but if you do just find yourself as kind of an exception, you don't fall into any other bucket, and by not being part of them, you don't get any other aid. So the way this program's set up, from what I read, is they basically are attributing about $10,000 per person or family that they're helping out, and they can contribute a portion of the rent. So in the example, it was an $1,100 rent, and they were going to pay $700 per month for the first 4 months, as well as they provided them some funds to purchase a couch and some food to kind of fully stock up their fridge off the hop. So they were really ready to get back into everything and kind of keep working and just reintegrate them, because they're not the classic traumatic experience, mental illness, anything else. They're everyday people that just really had a small patch of bad luck and needed help where no other program was available for them.
Also, apparently, that program was born during the pandemic. A lot of people during the pandemic has a hard time with income, and actually they went to that stage in their life that they couldn't. They got evicted from their apartment, and also other kind of people that face that problem is people that probably LJ, that we call it the renoviction. Like when the landlord decide to repossess your apartment to do major renovation, apparently to give it to a family member. A lot of people find them on the street, and that program was actually very helpful in the last 2 years.
It's good to hear that they actually kept that program alive, because there was a lot of really great programs that were implemented during that crisis stage of the pandemic that they ended up getting rid of. Like, I think of that number that you could call for your child to get access to a doctor's appointment. They had it during the pandemic, and then they ended it. So, it's nice to see for once the government actually keeping a program that is actually helping people. Quickly, housing affordability in Canada. Apparently, it is not going to return to pre-pandemic levels for at least 2 years. This comes from a report from Desjardins. Why not? Why can't things go back to normal?
Because normal doesn't exist anymore, right? Ugh. It's the idea of inflation. We've been getting inflation down under control, if you will, from that peak at 8% down to about 3.4% now. But what people forget is that we're not going to get back to the old prices. We're just going to stop inflating the prices as quickly as we have been seeing. So that's one issue. And the reason why we're seeing all of this is the fact that we don't have enough housing supply.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing.
Because it's funny that we're talking about because I don't want to give up the trivia question answer. Mm-hmm. But the prediction was by the authority, that is the answer to our trivia question, projected that between now and 2030, we need 3.5 million new homes to be built across Canada.
Oh my goodness.
That's been revised to 5 million.
Apparently, Martin, it's more than that. It's more close to 5 to 6 million.
Exactly. The
shortage in housing in Canada, because they didn't count as well all the foreign student that comes every year to Canada to study.
Well, the other issue is, as soon as mortgage rates go down slightly, I think, and we mentioned this last week, I think there's a pent-up demand, and I think a lot of people are going to go back into the market. It's demand and supply. So if there's a low supply, a lot of demand, the prices are not going to come back down.
That makes sense. We're coming up on 12:15. This is Under One Roof MTL on CJAD 800. Still to come, we have a guest in studio with us that is going to answer your questions. We have Home Inspector Charles Cobden here. He can answer any questions that you have about home inspections. So if you want to grab a line right now, 514-790-0800 is the number to call. We will answer those questions as best we can.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
This is your lingo lexicon on Under One Roof MTL. Title insurance. A policy that protects the buyer and lender against defects in the title, ensuring legal ownership of the property. Title insurance provides financial protection in case there are disputes over property ownership. This has been your lingo lexicon on Under One Roof MTL.
The time is 12:20 here on CJD 800. I'm Robin Flynn with Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties. Super stoked to have an awesome guest. Our first in-studio guest, which is a lot of fun. When you're buying a home, it's probably the biggest purchase you're ever going to make in your entire life. So why would you leave something like that to chance? Hiring an experienced home inspector who can go through the property with a fine-tooth comb will protect you and your investment in the long run. So, what exactly are home inspectors looking for when they inspect a property? And is it ever okay to forego an inspection altogether? I think I already know the answer to that question. Charles Cobden is a registered home inspector and founder of Latitude 45. Thank you so much for being here, sir.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me in.
Of course. So first of all, what exactly does a home inspector do? When you go into a property, what are you looking for?
I'm going to look at the general condition of the house. I'm looking at defects. I'm there to answer all your questions, walk you through the home, explain to you things that are coming up, things that need immediate repair, things that will need repair future, things to avoid, give you an overall look at the house.
If you have any questions, by the way, for Charles, you can call us at 514-790-0800 or you can text us at 514-800. We will get to as many of your questions as we can. LJ?
So in Montreal, obviously, we have a lot of older properties here, and it's quite normal to find defects or issues that will require repairs on these properties. What would you consider to be a deal breaker? And have you ever recommended to a client to not purchase a home that you were inspecting?
I'd say a deal breaker is when the repairs or the work required in the house exceed your expectations or what you're willing to put into it. Almost everything on a home is repairable. Just are you willing to embark? So is there deal breakers? That depends on you and depends on your budget and depends what you are planning on doing with the home. Have I ever told a client not to buy a house? No, not directly. I'm there to inform you and to give you the best decision that you could possibly make based on the knowledge there. There are some homes that are good for some people and maybe not better for others. So basically we go on what the defect is and what your expectations and what you're planning on doing with the home.
Fred?
Charles, a lot of properties in Canada, because we have four seasons, you could face foundation problem. What will be a real problem in foundation that you could advise the client not to purchase the property? Because it seems that there's a lot of crack. Every foundation has, sometimes very minor crack. But what can you say to us about that?
They all have cracks. I always tell my clients that if I don't find a crack, I'll look a second time. I'm going to find a crack. So we're looking at basically the type of material, the area that the foundation of the home is built also has a big impact on it. There's some areas of Montreal where there's a lot of settlement and a lot of movement in the soil around the house. There's areas that have high water table. So there's different aspects that can impact the foundation. So we're looking at how old is the house? What material is the foundation made of? What is the area? And what are the expectations for that given thing? In terms of foundation cracks, there's shrinkage cracks, which is completely normal. And there's also some settlement cracks, which is a result of some soil movement or some external pressures on the foundation. So we'll be looking at that. How old are the cracks? What type of movement and the area and what to address from there.
We're in studio with Charles Cobden, registered home inspector. If you have questions for him, you can call us at 514-790-0800. Or if you're feeling shy, you can text us as well, 514-800. Do include your first name, though, so we can give you a shout out with your question. Martin?
I've got two questions, and
Perfect.
I'm gonna ask the entertaining question. So, Charles, during an inspection, what's the weirdest thing you've come across during the inspection?
Ooh, where do I start? Don't know where to start. There was one house I did, and it was a suburban area, and access to the attic was through you slid a bookcase over in the dining room, and there were stairs that brought you up into the attic. Once in the attic, there were some boards that walked across, and at the other end of the attic, I found a room with no windows, just a drywalled room in the attic.
That's kind of creepy.
That was kind of creepy. So the big question that one came in is why was the room in the attic? So we had to do, they had to talk to the town, they had to talk to neighbors and everything. And in this case, it was criminal activity. It was a drug depot. They were just storing drugs in the house.
Okay.
So it didn't harm the house. It wasn't. It's not like growing marijuana in your house, which can harm the house, but it was questionable activity.
That was not where my brain was going.
That's why I saw it and I said, maybe I should correct where this one's going.
But does that increase the value because it's an additional bedroom in the attic?
Well, there's no bedroom, no closet. It's not a bedroom, right? No windows, no closet. You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. We are here with a registered home inspector. How many properties have you inspected over the course of your career? Do you have a ballpark number?
Maybe 5,000.
Wow. So you're the guy. Like when everybody says, I know a guy, you're the guy. You're the guy that they know. Do your friends ever call you up with questions?
Yeah, I don't want to answer them anymore.
Or send them an invoice after you answer their question.
So
Martin?
can I ask my second question?
Of course.
Oh, thank you. So I'm about to sell my house. How do I prepare my house so that when it gets inspected, I get a positive inspection from the inspector?
I can't guarantee you a positive inspection, but you could do a pre-listing inspection report, which is a really good idea. It takes the stress off and allows us to look at the house beforehand, might give you indication of things you should repair, things that might require further assessment, things that might require further testing. Sometimes I'll say, you might want to fix that, you might want to deal with that, you might want to clear that up first. And in the case of a multiple offer situation on a house, it can relieve the stress for the buyer. There's a report on the table. They can walk into it more comfortable knowing that this inspection's been done and they know the condition of the house before proceeding with the offer.
So if someone has sort of freshly painted, cleaned the carpets, done all the sort of cosmetic improvements to a house before you come in, does that have a positive influence on your inspection?
No, it's not going to change anything in my inspection. I'm looking at structure. I'm looking at mechanical systems. I'm looking at electrical, foundation, attic, ventilation. I'm not looking how clean the walls are.
I was actually hoping you were going to answer that way.
514-800 if you have a question for Charles. We have this one from Karen. I'm shy, love the show. I have a low slope tar and gravel roof. I would like to know if it can be refurbished. It is 23 years old.
Elastomer.
Elastomer.
I would do an elastomer roof on a low slope tar and gravel.
What's that?
It's a membrane roof that you can put on instead of tar and gravel. A lot lower maintenance, easier to clean, easier to maintain, longer lasting. The gravel tends to there's no gravel to slide off. So it's just the solution you want for that.
When I had my home inspection done when we bought our house, the guy who was inspecting my house tried to invite me up onto the roof with him. I said, no, thank you. I politely declined. This is why I hired you. But he sort of pointed and he said, that's a really good roof. What would make you say something like that? Like, this is a really good roof. What is a really good roof to you?
In case of a sloped roof, it would be looking for the slope of the roof, the drainage away, the ventilation of the attic, things like that. On a low slope roof or a flat roof, more or less the condition of the roof. Is there any sagging? Is there any water pooling in the middle? What type of membrane, going back to elastomer, things of that nature.
All right, that makes sense. You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800. We are in studio with registered home inspector Charles Cobden. Coming up after the news, we're going to learn the difference between an amortization period and a mortgage term. You definitely don't want to miss that. Do we have any last questions for Charles before we wrap up?
I could go for one more.
Martin, you could probably go for 20 more.
Well, so technology has changed absolutely everything day to day in our lives. How has technology changed the inspection business over the last 20, 30 years?
How's it changed what I'm looking for in terms of the inspection?
No, just the tools that you have access to when you're doing an inspection. Are there new tools for inspectors when they're going in to find things that are
Humidity.
behind the walls,
Absolutely.
humidity.
There's moisture meters, there's infrared cameras, there's thermal cameras, there's temperature guns, there's all types of things we can use to.
So has it made it more precise in terms of when you do your inspection? Because of technology, you get a better reading of the condition of the house?
Yes, and it also gives me more of a validation for what I'm suspecting. So if I'm going into a house and I'm looking for heat loss or air leakage and things like that, I have tools that I can validate what I'm suspecting is the issue with the home.
Cool.
It is 12:30 here on CJD 800, so we do have to go to news. We actually have another question that came in via text, and we have Jay on the line who has a question. Charles, can you hang out for a little bit?
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to get to your question after the news, Jay. You're listening to Under One Roof MTL on CJD 800.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties. This is the Mortgage Minute.
What's the difference between an amortization period and a mortgage term? This is your Mortgage Minute. Understanding your mortgage hinges on two key terms: amortization and term. Amortization is the time it will take to pay off your mortgage, often stretching to 25 years or more. Over time, it systematically shifts the focus of your payments from interest to principal, thereby reducing your debt over time. The term found within the amortization period, in contrast, refers to the duration of a specific mortgage agreement, typically lasting between 6 months and 10 years, with 5 years being the most common. This agreement specifies interest rates and conditions that can be renegotiated at the end of the given term. It allows you to pivot towards another lender offering better conditions, or if your financial situation has changed, you can choose to alter the parameters of your mortgage. This structure serves a dual purpose. While amortization offers the long view for your mortgage repayment, terms provide flexibility through possible periodic renegotiations with lenders. The dual setup guides homeowners towards their ultimate objective: owning a home mortgage-free.
That was your Mortgage Minute here on CJD 800. This is Under One Roof MTL. I am Robin Flynn with Fred Pichette and Martin Spalding from Fred and Martin Mortgages, LJ Aguinaga from LJ Realties, and we have with us in studio today Charles Cobden, registered home inspector, founder of Latitude 45. If you have questions for Charles, now is the time. 514-790-0800 is the number to call. Jay is on the line with a question for you. Charles, hey Jay, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
Very good. What's your question for the inspector today?
How would one, I'm building a home, how would one go about building a foundation that doesn't crack, or like the strongest foundation?
Shrinkage cracks are quite normal with a home, so the concrete, as it dries out, you probably will end up with some cracks in it. I'm going to say 95% of the houses I look at do have cracks. In terms of structural settlement, that is really, you have to do soil testing beforehand, make sure that the house is being built on solid ground, proper rebar, proper grade of concrete, and it's engineered for the structure you're going to be putting on top.
Does that answer your question, Jay?
Hello?
Does that answer your question, Jay?
What about is there a best type of sealant for the exterior to waterproof it, like a membrane?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would do, most homes, they do just a tarred coating on the foundation. I prefer a rubberized coating, which will last much longer. And then they can put a Delta MS, which is basically, it's like a sheet of Lego that they put up against the foundation, and it gives an airspace. So it holds the hydrostatic pressure away from the home, and it gives it a drainage layer against the foundation, along with a proper French drain, and you smooth sailing.
If you want to text in your question, you can do that as well, 514-800. We do have a question that came in during the news. If buyers forego an inspection, what recourse do they have if defects are found after the house is bought?
Very little. You do have some recourse if it was a hidden defect that was undisclosed. So if it was something that the owner knew about and failed to mention or failed to disclose or hid it from you, in that case, there is some legal recourse against them. But if it was something that an inspection could have picked up on, and you forego the right to that.
I know early in the pandemic when things were really, really crazy with the housing market, some people were foregoing inspections as a way to try and sweeten their offer, right? You know, you're going to go through much faster with me. I already have secured financing, no inspection, don't worry about it, take my offer. Was that something that was more common? And what are why shouldn't you do that?
Absolutely, it was more common, and as I was just saying, do not do it. You could be stuck with a big issue, a big expense, and a big repair that you wouldn't have had to do. If it's a really hot market, I do suggest doing a pre-listing inspection, so that report is available on the table for everybody to see, and it makes the transaction much smoother.
If there's a pre-listing inspection that's already been done, can you forego the inspection?
Can you forego the inspection? No, but it gives you some more insight into it. It depends on who did the report. Is it properly done report? Was it a certified inspector? Sometimes you can give me a call. I'm more than happy. You can send me the report and I'll go over and say, well, it wasn't properly done, or it was a decent report on the home, and go from there. But at least it'll give you a stronger peace of mind moving forward with the home.
I'd like to hear, LJ, when a client of his says, I'm going to forego the inspection. What's your reaction, LJ?
Don't do it. Immediately. It's always been a don't do it. Even during the pandemic market, if you will, when people were doing it left, right, and center, we always encourage people to do an inspection. The rare cases where he said it's okay, it would have been an inspector who did a pre-listing inspection, who's on my recommended list of inspectors that I had direct access to call up and ask questions about the inspection report as to why, what was seen, and actually get a better breakdown of it. But other than that, it was always do an inspection. It's not worth the headache and the potential risk to buy this home and deal with the issues later down.
Why would people decide to forego an inspection? Like, what would their reasoning be?
The reasoning was simple. They wanted to be competitive, right? Mm-hmm. So when there's 10 offers or 15 or even 25 offers on a property, and price is obviously a huge determining factor on this, but the other thing was, what are the conditions? Is there a document review clause? Is there an inspection clause? Dates, etc. So people were going in as clean as possible, which was a pre-approval or an all-cash offer. So remove the financing condition, remove the inspection condition. It really just came down to, in some cases, we had properties sold in 5 minutes after the offer was signed. It was done.
LJ, another question. I heard that often. People say, "Well, it looks nice. The property looks fine. I don't want to do an inspection." What would you say to those people?
There is no better investment. So depending on if it's a condo or a house or a larger property, it's going to cost you between $500 to maybe $1,500. But you're spending $500,000, $1 million, anywhere in between in terms of price. There is no better investment to actually know what you're getting yourself into, because you're making a very large investment into a property, and it's going to come with a lot of other potential, some maintenance issues, some regular things. You want to know what you're getting into.
514-800 if you have a question. We have one here from Joseph. How long do you have to find a hidden defect? Is there a statute of limitations on that to find the defect?
Depends what the defect is. No. So the short answer is no. There's no statute of limitations on finding the defect, depending on what the defect is and the scope of it. In case of a buried oil tank, you can go back to everybody who's owned the house for generations.
Right.
So to my understanding of that effect is there is no limit as to how far you can go. However, you have to prove that the defect existed on the date of purchase.
Gotcha.
So obviously as time goes on, it becomes much more difficult to prove.
Charles, what would be the three most defects that you see in a property normally when you inspect the property?
The most common ones?
Yeah, the most common ones that you see.
There's always foundation issues, electrical, plumbing issues, I guess are the three things that come up the most.
And what about the structure? Because we don't really see behind the walls if. Well,
there's signs of settlement. You can see it in the walls. You can see it in the finishing. You can see it in the door frames. You can see it in the floors, and that starts from the foundation often.
Martin?
Charles, are there different levels of inspection? Like, is there a visual inspection, or is there an inspection where you actually open up the walls, you check the foundation, you go up into the attic? What are the different levels of inspection?
When you're buying a home, typically it's a visual pre-purchase inspection where I'm not opening walls, I'm not digging holes, I'm not disassembling anything major. You can have an intrusive inspection if there's something that warrants it further. If I suspect there's mold or water infiltration, you can ask for a more intrusive inspection of that area where we'll open the wall, we'll have a look, try and find the source of the issue there.
So does that generally come from you? Does that come from the potential buyer? If the buyer's walking around, all of a sudden they see water on the floor in the basement behind the furnace, they go, Charles, can you go check that in, do a deep dive?
It usually starts with me during the inspection. So going through the inspection, if we find something that warrants further evaluation, I will recommend that you have further evaluation done on it.
Okay. Is that a different price point? Is there a standard fare for a general inspection? Then if you go deeper?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And usually for further intrusive inspection, it's going to happen on another day. You have to get authorization from the owners to do it. A lot of people are going to say, no, I do not want you opening my walls just like on the spot. So you have to for the negotiation for it.
So if the owner says no to the potential buyer, doesn't the potential buyer become suspect? I'm looking at LJ more than
Very
Charles
much so. And to be honest, it's usually quite rare that we're going to get a no. If the inspection report says that I suggest you bring a mason in or humidity specialist, whatever, you're going to get them to come in. We're going to get the authorization. We're going to make the hole, the opening, and see what's happening behind there, because whether it's us who purchases the property or the next buyer, this issue isn't going away, and everybody's going to have questions about it, and the seller is going to have to declare this issue as well to the next people.
Charles Cobden is a registered home inspector, founder of Latitude 45. Where can people reach you?
514-835-4759.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me out.
Under One Roof MTL, hosted by Robin Flynn, featuring mortgage brokers Fred and Martin and real estate expert LJ Aguinaga. Presented by Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ Realties.
My goodness, I feel like the fastest hour is the hour that we spend in this studio every Sunday. It is almost 1 p.m. We're with you for another 9 minutes here on Under One Roof MTL. I'm Robin Flynn. That is Fred and Martin from Fred and Martin Mortgages and LJ from LJ Realties. Our last guest, we still have questions coming in for Charles. LJ, what's his phone number and website if people want to get in touch with him?
So you can reach him at 514-835-4759 or his website, montrealinspections.com.
Now, before we get to the answer to our trivia question this week, why don't we take a look at our property of the week?
Let's do it. So this week I'm highlighting a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom condo in Ville Saint Laurent. It was built in 2005 and it's just under 930 square feet. The property offers an indoor garage as well as a storage locker. It's listed for $440,000, just steps away from the Montpellier Future REM station, as well as Vanier College and Cégep Saint Laurent. As always, my favorite restaurant in the area is Elunda.
What's Elunda?
Ooh, I've never been.
What do they serve?
I've been there. It's really, really good. It's a Greek restaurant.
Exactly.
Ooh.
Oh.
How's their tzatziki?
Excellent.
Oh.
What about their baklava?
No, it's no baklava. It's Greek.
Baklava is Greek.
Baklava,
Well,
of course.
baklava is
Of
Greek,
course.
isn't
Oh,
it?
we're going to get into a
It's
big
more-
debate. My
well,
wife's going to be angry at you, Fred.
I'm sorry.
Is it
Because some people say it's Lebanese, more
Yeah.
Lebanese than Greek, but
Really?
yeah.
I always thought it was Greek.
Different
too.
amount of honey in it. No, the Greek one is better.
Okay, we are getting off track
Okay.
here. Neither here nor there. So where can people go to check out the property of the week? Is there an open house or a listing that they should go look at?
You can find it on our website, ljrealties.com, and you can schedule a visit directly on there.
Fantastic. All right, trivia question of the week brought to you by Felix and Norton Cookies. Visit their store at Blue Haven Shopping Center, 3705 St. John's Boulevard in DDO. The person who texted in first, we got tons of answers, correct answers to our trivia question this week, but Derek in DDO was the fastest. Our question, what is the name of the federal agency in Canada responsible for overseeing the country's housing market and providing mortgage insurance to lenders? The answer is...
CMHC.
That's right, the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Derek, congratulations. Check your phone. You have a text message from CJD 800. You can send us your information and you will have a lovely box of cookies from Felix and Norton delivered straight to your door. You don't even have to go anywhere. That's the absolute best part. Guys, what did we learn this week? We covered a lot of ground on today's show. I learned you should never forego a home inspection, no matter what, even if you want to sweeten your offer. Housing affordability, it is not going to return to pre-pandemic levels probably ever. Is that safe to say?
I don't know if it's safe to say that probably ever, but we're clearly not in that market anymore. It's a big word to say never, but we would need another COVID time, which nobody wants. But, the real estate market and the mortgage industry, it's a very interesting market lately, and we never know what could happen, but we're clearly not in the pre-pandemic time.
Yeah. I mean, the report from Desjardins said that not for at least 2 years, right?
And even that, what do they mean by pre-pandemic levels of affordability? Well, what are we trying to trigger? Is it the interest rates that they're referring to exactly? Because prices aren't going back down to where they were. We expected to really see prices compress with the huge increase in interest rates. And we saw a slight correction of about 10% for a month, 2 months maybe. And then it's been climbing up very, very steadily. even if we just look at the amount of properties sold in January 2024, so last month compared to the previous year, I believe sales were up 18% in the greater Montreal area. So we're seeing that people are really interested in getting back into the market right now, and things are definitely trending in that direction.
Right, and I think in the last 2 weeks, to be quite honest, tell me guys if I'm wrong, but I think the market started picking it up again. We got a lot of calls about mortgages. I don't know ULG about the
Our office has definitely been writing a lot of offers right now. We're seeing a lot of people make moves on different properties, and the listings are moving as well.
My takeaway is we need to build.
Yes.
And we need to build quickly. And we also have to get rid of, we didn't talk about it today, but there's a lot of red tape and a lot of bureaucracy around building. And the governments have to step in and streamline the operation, or we're never going to hit the targets that they are putting forward by 2030. There's no way.
Final listener questions, 514-800, 514-790-0800 if you have a question for Fred, Martin, or LJ. We have this question from Sydney. She says, hi, I bought a condo in my 50s with only 10% down because I had to start over financially after a divorce. I know I will never pay off the mortgage. I have about 180 grand equity. I'm currently planning my retirement and will continue to pay my mortgage throughout my retirement. Everyone around me is telling me that I will have to sell in order to access my equity. However, the mortgage is pretty low and I'd like to stay in my home. How can I access my equity without selling and without paying high interest rates with a home equity line of credit?
Do you want to go? You know what? Actually, we're getting a lot of questions, and the easy answer is a reverse mortgage. And I really think that, but a reverse mortgage is, it's not a one-line answer, and I really think that we should invite someone to come on and really flush out, break down what a reverse mortgage really looks like. Fred?
And also maybe if she's still working and have a decent income, she could probably set up a line of credit, like a HELOC, and that's going to give her access to the equity. But obviously she needs to qualify.
Well, I know she mentioned here that she's looking at retirement. She doesn't want to pay the high interest rates of a HELOC.
But what I did lately for a lot of clients, just before they get in retirement, to set up a line of credit will be a very, very good idea. And that could really help them to, let's say, if, again, we're going through a high inflation, or it could be a very good thing to look at.
We're also expecting that interest rate to go down, right? That's pegged on the prime rate of Canada. And if things do start to come down as of July, like the economists are telling us right now, then that rate will probably be significantly lower than what it is today. And we'll see where it's at when she actually needs access to the funds through that line of credit.
Well, that's pretty much it for us this week. Martin, I can see you're still chomping at the bit. You have so much more to say.
There's just one more thing. Depending on who the lender is, there are opportunities to make prepayments. So to pay down your mortgage more aggressively. So if she can afford to actually make double payments or prepayments on a yearly basis, that's a good way to tackle your mortgage.
Yeah, but she will need a HELOC to have access to the equity no matter what.
Well, we're not talking about pulling out the money. I'm talking about paying down the mortgage to create more equity.
A reminder that Under One Roof MTL can be heard live every Sunday at noon right after the trivia show here on CJD 800. To learn more about us and the show, you will soon be able to visit our website at underoneroofmtl.com. You can direct all of your mortgage and real estate questions to us at info@underoneroofmtl.com. Send us voice memos so we can play your question on the air next week. We'd love that. In the meantime, you can reach LJ, Fred, and Martin individually. LJ, where can people reach you?
My website, ljrealties.com. You can also find me on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. My handle is LJ Aguinaga, or my company's information under LJ Realties under the same platforms.
Fantastic. Fred and Martin, where can people find you guys?
FredMartin.com. But one thing that we haven't mentioned, we're actually licensed in Ontario as well.
Good to know.
So if you're moving from Ontario, because I know there are a lot of listeners in Cornwall, so if you're moving into Quebec, you need a mortgage. You're leaving Quebec into Ontario, we can handle both ways.
Fantastic. And if you're looking for somebody to run your social media or produce a podcast for you, you can learn more about the digital marketing services that I offer at my website, robinflynn.com. If you missed anything or if you have any questions about today's show, you can hear the show in its entirety afterwards on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Apple. It's everywhere, wherever you get your podcasts. For LJ, Fred, and Martin, I'm Robin Flynn. This has been Under One Roof MTL.